in the Office of Career Planning and Development to bring you today's event. And I want to thank all of them for all of their work in preparing today's panel and co-hosting this event with us. We're proud of all of our students, but it's especially rewarding today to have the opportunity to spend some time with our fairly recent and outstanding graduates about their experiences of life in the working world and how their time at KSU and in our college prepared them for their lives filled with hopefully meaning and purpose in work and beyond. So please note that we will be recording today's panel discussion, and thanks to all of you for spending this time with us this afternoon. And now it's my pleasure to turn the program over to our moderator, the Director of Development in the College of Humanities and Social Sciences, Ms. Christina Alexis Clark, who will introduce our panelists and facilitate the conversation. Christina?
Thank you so much, Carmen. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you and to be asked to play this role today. I really appreciate the opportunity to get to know some of our students better and to have some time with our alums, our outstanding alums, as Carmen put it. And thank you all for being here. I see Blake in his newsroom. That's pretty awesome. And I see you, Cameron, in your office, and you guys are seeming to do very well out in the world, and I can't wait to hear the inspiring words that you're going to give to our students. So I wanted to start first by just acknowledging all the students on the call. I know that most of you are going to be on mute, and it's fine to leave your camera on mute if you'd like. You're more than welcome to not have it on mute if you want to as well. I would just suggest keeping your audio on mute just so that we're not hearing a lot of background noise and feedback, and until it's your time to talk, you can keep it on mute. But I'd love to acknowledge our first freshman who got on the call, Camila. Thank you, Camila, for being the brightest and best on this call today. You were here almost before me and the rest of the people who are leading this, so congratulations for that. And maybe we can just have everybody in the chat function, the students who've joined, just introduce themselves and say what their major is, just so that we can have a little fun relating to you guys as we're talking. If there are facilitators here who have majored in the same thing, then they'll know that you're in their concentration as well. So you can take a few minutes to start putting that in the chat function now. And without further ado, let me introduce our amazing alums. So I'm going to start by just turning off my camera, if that's okay with you. And I'm going to share my screen. And if somebody could just let me know when they're able to see my screen, just as a confirmation, that'd be really helpful.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. All right, so as usual, this slide is very helpful for folks to know that there is always access to the Our Mentor Network. Students can now access any information about alums and from alums, and the Department of Career Planning and Development is the one who brings this great resource to students. So always know that little URL there that you can go and get mentorship, and you can connect with your fellow owls anytime you need to. So this is me. I am Christina Alexis, as was mentioned. I'm the Director of Development for the College of Humanities and Social Sciences. I'm proud to serve in this role. I'm so excited to have made a year in this role this past May. And you'll see that I graduated a long, long time ago. We don't need to talk about that date. But I did graduate with a degree in broadcast journalism, so I'm also a Humanities and Social Sciences student, former student. So here are our panelists. I'm going to go in the order of seniority, if that's okay with you, Jessie, not to put you on the spot, but love to introduce Jessie McCrary. I hope I pronounced that right, Jessie. Jessie received her BA from KSU in 2010. She's a coordinator of the Office of Undergraduate Resource and Fellowships at Georgia State University. And Jessie graduated with a degree in history. We'll hear more from her in just a moment. I'm going to go straight through and just introduce, again, in order of seniority, all of our panelists, and then we'll go back to sort of asking questions and being able to have the students ask them questions as well. So next up, Arielle Bailey received her BS from KSU in 2014 and is now a campus recruiter for Deloitte. Arielle graduated with a degree in communication with a concentration in media studies. Next up is Cameron Buckner. Cameron received her BS from KSU in 2015. She is now an attorney, a content creator, and social media strategist. Cameron graduated with a degree in political science and a minor in criminology. Next up is Courtney Bradford. She received her BA from KSU in 2018 and her MA in 2020. Congratulations, Courtney, for a recent graduation. She's now the editor of the Accreditation Commission for Education and Nursing. Courtney graduated with a degree in English, that's her BA, and in professional writing, her MA. And last but certainly not least, Blake Eason. Blake received his BS from KSU in 2019. He is the weekend anchor and weekday reporter for WRBL in Columbus, Georgia. Blake graduated with a degree in journalism and emerging media. So those are our distinguished cohort. I'm going way too far, all at the mercy of technology. I'd love to go back to the beginning of our group and just fire off a few questions if that's okay with you. Does that sound good with everybody?
Sounds good.
Sounds
Okay.
great.
Awesome. Well, Jessie, thank you so much for being here. You can unmute if you'd like. Love to hear a little bit more about your experience. And so the question that I have for you, just diving right in, is did you know what you wanted to do professionally and what you wanted to study academically when you first started at KSU? And if not, how did you find your path? And just to give you a little bit of a teaser, I'd love for you to talk about how you started off studying Spanish.
I will. It's a funny story. And especially with what I do now, working, I still work with undergraduate students, and so it is a funny and circuitous narrative. So, hi everyone, thanks for being here today. I'm Jessie McCrary. You did say my name correctly, and yes, I graduated with my BA from Kennesaw State in history, but that's not how I started out. I actually originally, when I started at KSU, was a Spanish major. I wanted to be a journalist, so actually I think similar to some of the other interests on this panel. I mean, I was just really interested in learning about other people, being able to listen to their stories and share that with other folks, pay attention to what was going on around me in the world. So because of that, I actually was able to go on a study abroad after my freshman year at KSU, and it was a joint program between GSU and KSU, which are now two institutions very close to my heart. And that was pretty much what changed my mind. I was so interested when I got to China at the various ways certain historical events could be interpreted based on who you were asking. So that idea might seem kind of basic. Maybe everyone knows that, but when I was 19, and it was one thing to learn about that people interpret historical events differently, and quite another to see it firsthand. And so I came home and I changed my major to history, and I really saw journalism and history as almost two sides of the same coin. I was involved in the Sentinel at KSU. I was serving as a section editor, eventually worked as the editor-in-chief, but it was all in the same kind of light of asking questions and learning about the world around me. And so there's awesome history faculty at Kennesaw. Even if you're not in the history as a major, I encourage you to take some of their upper level classes. It's a really, really great way to, again, expose yourself to some of the ideas that are out there. So that was part of my journey, was having that chance to see how history is sort of interpreted in other places and through other cultures. And that really was what sparked the major change. And ever since then, I feel like even though my career has taken many different paths, those kind of key themes of listening to others' perspectives and stories and being able to share those and have them be able to share their own stories is really still at the heart of everything that I do.
That's awesome, Jessie. Thank you. And I'd love to hear a little bit more if you don't mind sharing with us about your PhD candidacy.
Yes. So fast forward to 2020, I have decided, I don't know that I necessarily mentioned this, but I did get my master's in history quite a while ago, and then sort of was working professionally for a long time, but I've decided to go back for my PhD, but I've switched disciplines. I'm actually specifically getting my PhD now in rhetoric and composition, which is sort of a term for writing studies. And what I do with students is, as a scholarships and fellowships advisor, I'm helping them prepare really high stakes essay writing, so that they can potentially fund graduate school or go on a study abroad themselves. And so that kind of writing is right in line with what I am studying in my discipline. So someday maybe I'll, be a writing faculty member, but I also really love what I do in higher education. And so my degree, this PhD feels right for me either way, because the stuff I'm doing right now with students is still highly relevant in terms of, again, storytelling, making sure that folks are able to share their own journeys with other people.
That's awesome. And can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great. Thank you for that answer. Sorry, there was a little delay there. My computer on my end froze. So just wondering, just as a follow-up, the last question that I have for you before I get you out of the hot seat is wondering if you could just give us one tip that sort of brought you through. Now look at all you've done. You've done your BA, you've done your MA. What's that tip that you have for the students online right now to really inform their process, so hopefully they can go as far as you if that's their desire?
Yeah, this is something that I think I've spent maybe a decade saying now. It's your time in college is really your time to explore the things you're interested in, and as you move into your career, that can look and feel a lot different. But it's really, if I could give you the biggest advice, it's like study something that you are passionate about, that you love. Like, I was a major in history, and people would look at me and say, "What are you going to do with that?" My answer is, what am I not going to do with that? Okay, maybe I can't be an accountant, but I'm not interested in being an accountant, right? There's so many careers that having the kinds of skills that I learned, being able to think critically, being able to have conversations with other folks who don't think like me. These are the kinds of things that you learn in a humanities degree. And so I love that I can take that into any career field. Like I mean, even just seeing the diversity on this panel today should tell you that, what you major in is hardly defining that, I don't have to go be a historian because I majored in history. It's just a sort of a framework for how I go about, my life. And so a bachelor's degree is a bachelor's degree, and it will open doors for you. And I guess my biggest shtick, which goes along with, I think, the Career Development Center too, is just being able to make sure you can articulate that, hey, here's what my degree taught me and why I would be a really, really valuable employee in whatever it is you want to go do. So that could be government, that could be business, that could be nonprofit work. Really, the avenues are wide open. I think it's actually I think it's more flexible than if I only majored in, computer science or something. Not to knock computer science, but.
No, we didn't think you were knocking computer science at all. I appreciate all your answers, and I appreciate you spending your time just talking to us and giving us a good understanding. So next up is Arielle Bailey. Arielle received her BS, as I mentioned, from KSU in 2014. She is a campus recruiter at Deloitte. Arielle graduated with a degree in communication and a concentration in media studies. Arielle. Arielle, can you hear us okay?
Yeah, I can hear you now. The audio went out on my end, but I can hear you now. Yes. I don't think if you asked me a question, I didn't hear it.
No, I just said thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, glad to be here.
So my first question for you, Arielle, is in regards to what sort of happened outside of the classroom for you that informed your process?
So I'll backtrack. So when I started at KSU, it was actually a transfer from Valdosta State. And at the time, I thought I wanted to be a education major and go into teaching. And early on in the process, taking some education courses, I was like, this isn't for me. So I started researching different majors at KSU, and I had to take a mandatory communication class. And from there, I decided I wanted to kind of explore that area of studies and where that would take me. And so through that process, I decided on the concentration in media studies and did some internships my last couple years in radio, and then also I did like with the television production company, and decided that wasn't for me either. So I ended up graduating kind of not knowing what I wanted to do. So I ended up working at Kennesaw State in the Career Center in an admin role. And through my time there for 3.5 years, I developed a passion for talent development, talent acquisition. And so that's kind of how that's led me in a role at Deloitte, developing talent, so to speak, but also acquiring talent for the company. So in a nutshell, that's kind of how I've gotten to where I am now.
That's awesome, Arielle. Thanks for the answer on that. And if I can just probe a little bit deeper, I would love to learn more about that transition that you made in corporate, and how smooth was that for you, and what were sort of some of the factors that you had to weigh in that consideration?
Yeah, so higher education is definitely different than corporate America. I wanted to move to corporate, I'll say, just to diversify my experiences. And the transition wasn't that bad. I was expecting for corporate America to be more stiff because higher education is a little bit, I don't want to say laid back in a way that they don't get, that they're not business, or I don't say a part, but it's a little bit more laid back than the corporate space. But in transitioning to recruiting, it's in human resources. And so human resources is more laid back than you would think. And that, when I say laid back, I mean not stiff and like a stickler for following the rules and you have to dress in a suit and a tie every day. And so that transition, I think, was smoother than I thought. I definitely was intimidated at first, but I found my support system. So when I first when I first transitioned to corporate America, I was working for a bank in the recruiting space. So that was definitely intimidating, but I found my support system within the department that I was in. And so that kind of helped me with that transition of just like, okay, so how do you all typically do things? And you'll find when you want to go into the workspace, every company, whether it's in higher education or whether it's with a corporation in the private or public sector, they all have their own culture. So, finding someone to be either a mentor or a support system when you start working will definitely help with that transition. And that's been my key to transitioning into the corporate space.
Great. And finally, one last question for you, Arielle. What is your best advice for the students online right now?
My best advice would be just taking this time, especially while you're in school, to find what you like to do and what you're good at. Being confident in those things will help you in the future as you move forward through if you want to get another degree or if you want to, go into the workforce after graduation. But having that understanding of what you're passionate about and being able to articulate that, knowing what you're good at, whether that's, putting in data or talking to people or being an extrovert, putting yourself out there, just knowing what you like to do and what you're good at through this period will definitely help you in the long run. And of course that will change, but if you're able to either, write it down or practice articulating it, that's going to help you in the long run, understanding your gifts and your talents as you move forward in your careers.
Awesome. Good piece of advice. I appreciate you. Thank you, Arielle, for being with us. So next up in order of seniority again is Cameron Buckner. Cameron, you'll have to apologize that I won't be able to put up your slide, but your beautiful face is on the screen. So Cameron is an attorney, content creator, and social media strategist. Graduated with her BS in political science and a minor in criminology, just as a reminder. So Cameron, the question I have for you is, could you talk a little bit about a professor, a class, or an academic experience that sort of prepared you for your post-graduation and professional personal life? And just as a teaser, maybe talk a little bit about an advisor that you had that made an impression on you.
Absolutely. Thanks y'all for having me. So going into undergrad, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I had a lot of different passions. I wasn't sure which one I wanted to make the major out of, I guess you could say. I initially wanted to major in theater, and then I met with my advisor, who was Dr. White, Dr. Kenneth White, and he was a lawyer. And I was like, well, how is that really like? Is it like the TV shows? And he's like, that's not how it is, but join the mock trial team and see how you like it. That's what I did, and that's really what sold me. And I thought at the time you had to major in political science in order to go to law school. So that's what I did. And then criminology just kind of fell in my lap. I really enjoy criminal law, and I still do, even though that's not the area I practice in. But he really was the deciding factor for me to go the law school route, and I thank him for that. So that's pretty much how I stumbled into even wanting to go to law school.
That's wonderful. Thank you. And if you could just give us a little bit of an understanding of how you're doing your job right now in this crazy world that we're living in. Obviously, there's a big role for social media right now with information and controlling misinformation that's happening in the world. So I'm sure there's some brilliant nuggets you can give us there. Can you talk a little bit about how all of your work, all of your roles are sort of how they're going forward in this visual and virtual world that we're living in right now?
Absolutely. So, upon graduating law school, I was working at an employment litigation law firm, which I love, and I recently have transitioned out of that because I realized there's a niche there that needs an attorney. So, social media, they need someone not only to help with influencer contracts and content creating contracts and just agreements that they don't understand. And because I've been in the influencer space since 2014, I've been creating content as a creator. I realized that now I have two areas that I'm able to fulfill, not only as an attorney, but also as a creator. So with that, of course, there's COVID that happened, and that throws in an extra element that just brings some uncertainty. So with my employment experience, I'm also able to give some consulting to HR directors, to employers and things of that nature to kind of give them guidance on what mechanisms they need to have in place for remote work. It's just so new, as well as social media space is new as well, and so is influencer marketing. So with the social media strategist job, what I do is I help law firms, solo practitioners, and lawyers to help build their social media presence because we're not passing out business cards anymore. We're at home. So a lot of them are trying to figure out how to navigate in this environment and on the social media when law is really traditional. And a lot of them are like, website, what is that? Social media, what is that? So I love that now I'm able to kind of bridge that gap for them.
That's awesome. And finally, not to keep you in the hot seat too long, Cameron, just wondering, you kind of created your own table here when they talk about, sort of making a table or pulling up a seat at it. It seems like you created your own table. How did you do that? Can you tell all of the students on the phone how you go about actually making a seat at your own table?
I think it just takes risk, courage, ambition, drive, and just realizing what are your strengths. Like, what are things that you can bring to the table that someone else might not be able to? What are you good at? What do you like to do? And where is the need? So, how can you help people? And any degree that I've had along the way has been the stepping stone for me to get into the position I am and just try to figure out how it works.
Absolutely. And that risk, taking is really important. We find that I definitely find that some of the folks who I'm interfacing with now, who are students and graduate students, they have a lot more chutzpah than I had back in the day. And I really love to learn from that. So thank you, Cameron, and to all of you who seem to have a lot of chutzpah. And certainly if you're just getting through this time in our history, then you definitely have more nerve than most people. So next up, without further ado, is Courtney Bradford. Courtney graduated in 2018. Her current role is editor of the Accreditation Commission for Education and Nursing. She graduated with a degree in English and an MA in professional writing in 2020. Congratulations again, Courtney, and welcome.
Hi, thank you.
Of course. Yeah, so I know that there's a lot of things that we can do while we're in college. And there's, it seems like an unlimited amount of time, but there's always that one thing that you wish you did. Can you talk about that a little bit for us, Courtney? What did you wish you did that you didn't do?
I kind of wish I had joined some student organizations. As you mentioned, like I got my bachelor's and my master's in Kennesaw, and the entire 6-year period, I was like, I should join an organization. And every year went by, and I was like, I didn't do it. And I kind of wish that I had actually like because I'm kind of an introvert, and I was like, I don't want to deal with meeting a whole bunch of new people. Let's just stick to my my bubble of friends, and we'll just do whatever. But I kind of wish that I'd made those connections and joined an organization of like-minded people, and just kind of made those connections for the future, because I feel like I really missed out there. I have friends who they were either in sororities at their colleges, or they were in different student organizations. They talk so highly about their time there and the friends they made there, and I kind of wish I had taken advantage of that and made some actual connections at college.
Mm-hmm. That's really, really great advice. And I wonder, it said in your bio that you always knew what you wanted to do. Did that play a part, that knowledge that you just knew what direction you were going, you had your North Star? Did that play a part in not sort of diverting to other things?
It probably did. I knew what I planned to do. I knew that I wanted to work with words in some way, whether writing or editing. And so I wasn't too let's find out what all I can do here. And so I just kind of stuck to myself. And that is probably my biggest regret, is just not joining those organizations and kind of branching out. And just, I don't know, maybe it would have changed my mind had I gone and visited other organizations that had all these other majors in there. I might have changed my mind about what I wanted to do, but I'm enjoying what I do now, so I don't regret that. I just regret not joining the organizations.
Absolutely. I think we have a question from Lisa. Lisa, go ahead.
Yes, oops, I don't know if you can see me. This question is actually for Ariel. I was actually one of your competitors at another company, part of the Big Four. When I recruited on campus and I had an intern or I had a recent graduate or what have you, I found that their university education and reality kind of didn't mix. They had this kind of fantasy of what the real world was going to be like. Do you find that to be a problem? I know when I'm in panel discussions at different universities, that's always something that I leave graduates with, is that, again, what you see on TV or what you hear or what you learn is not the reality. This is the reality. So do you find that to be an issue when you're recruiting on campus?
So that's an interesting question. So for me, in comparison to my other peers that are campus recruiters, I didn't mention this, but my last year at KSU, when I worked in the Department of Career Planning and Development, I was a career advisor. So when I interact with students, I have that lens as well. So I'm used to the things that students, come up to me about in regards to their career choices and what they want to do, especially with Deloitte being a well-known company and a public service firms with different avenues and areas that students can work in. So when I'm interacting with students, I pretty much expect any and everything, and I kind of put that advisor lens on and kind of give them realistic expectations, especially when it comes to opportunities at our company. And and I'll tell them, based off your experiences, this kind of doesn't align with what we're looking for, but these are some things you can do to make yourself competitive and a valuable candidate for us. So it's hard for me to answer that directly just because I have that advising experience. So I kind of, utilize those skills when I have those one-on-one interactions with students to kind of guide them and help frame their mindset when they are in the job market, whether it be with, my company, which I hope they, consider, but that's kind of my approach when connecting with students.
Lisa, I'd love for you to throw that question back out to the group at the Q&A part in the end of our session. That's a great question, and thank you, Arielle, for your answer.
Sure.
Courtney, just to head back to you for a second. So last piece, as you were saying, you were going through the motions of really thinking, should I have done more student groups? Should I have gotten more involved? Besides those types of thoughts, have you ever sort of given any thought to what you would tell a room full of college students who are currently in their experience, your best advice that you would give them for the future?
I would say listen to and respect your professors, because I know that I had a lot of opportunity to do extracurricular types of activities through the professors that I developed relationships with. So I think it's really important to just kind of try to make those connections with your professors. I know that I was able to work on 3 separate book projects as an editor, and then I had a graduate research assistant position because I made a connection with a professor during my undergraduate year. So I feel like it's really important, especially the professors that are in your department, just like, try to make some kind of human connection with them, and they'll try to open doors for you for the most part.
That's great. Thank you. I appreciate that, Courtney, and I hope everybody could hear it over the obvious landscaping that's happening on my end as well. My goodness, this working from home business is a lot more challenging than we may have envisioned at the beginning. Whoever thought it was going to be cool was wrong. Moving right along, last but certainly not least, Blake Eason in his wonderful newsroom. Hi, Blake, and welcome, and thank you for being here with us. For the students, a reminder that Blake is a weekend anchor and weekday reporter for WRBL in Columbus, Georgia, and graduated with a BS in journalism and emerging media in 2019. So thank you for Blake. So my question for you, Blake, is a little bit similar.
Hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah, we can hear you. I guess one of the things I always wonder for people who are going out into the world, is it more important to have passion, or is it more important to make a good living? What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, for me, I'm going to follow my passion any day of the week. I think one of the biggest things I can tell anybody that wants to go into television news, you do not get into this industry to make money. You get into this industry because you want to tell stories and you want to help people. And, I think one of the things that's been interesting for me in this season, as I've finally found my first job in TV, and I get to be a reporter, and I would say I'm living my dream right now. This is what I've always wanted to do, is to work in TV in some capacity. The money starting out in this business is not great, but that was never a factor for me when I began to even have this conversation about this being a potential opportunity, was because it's always been what I've wanted to do. I've always wanted to have the opportunity to go out and tell stories, to shoot, to edit, to write, and to convey a message and to help people in a local news market. And so I would say I'm always going to be one that's going to follow my passion. There was an opportunity that came up as I was kind of searching for a job, which obviously if you've been searching for a job in the middle of a pandemic, more power to you. It is a very difficult process. No one told us 2019 and 2020 grads that we would be graduating right into the middle of a pandemic. And so it has been a challenge nonetheless. But I stayed so true to who I was and what my passions are, that I wasn't going to go and just take just a job just because it was a job. Thankfully, I had a part-time job that was able to help financially, but I was so persistent in wanting to find a job and doing what I wanted to do, which was television news. And so I'm thankful that I have one, and it's aligned with my passions. And I obviously recognize that that's a privilege to be able to work in your passions. And so if you're able to do so, I would always say, follow that, follow that, follow that. One of my mentors told me and said, look, if you can make enough money to survive, then do it. And that was such great advice for me to hear, obviously going into this new season of mine. And then another thing was too, that he told me was, consider your first couple of years into whatever your passion is in that particular industry. Consider that as your years of going to quote unquote grad school. Now, obviously not to discredit anyone who went to grad school. I got out of college as quickly as I possibly could because I am not the best kind of student that there is. I don't know if I should say that on this panel, but I will say I wanted real world experience. And so I kind of consider your first couple of years in whatever profession you're working in as those grind years, as the years that you kind of have to get dirty. You have to kind of learn everything. And that's what I love so much about my current job is it is everything that I could ask for. I get to write, I get to shoot, I get to edit, I set up my own live shots. I produce the shows that I anchor. It is everything. And as I say that out loud, I say it with a smile on my face, but internally I'm stressed out all the time because it's so much work. but it's the thing that I've always dreamed of doing. And so I can't complain. When it's such a privilege to follow your dreams and also get paid for it, and I never want to miss that. And so I think that's what just makes me super grateful to have the opportunity to work in a field of my passion.
That's awesome, Blake, and we're really happy for you. Your excitement is coming straight through the screen, and honestly is very inspiring. And I think it's great for all of the current students to hear. A lot of times, some of our more practical advisors and mentors will tell us, to go in the direction of stability, but stability is also about loving what you do and having that passion, and you're living proof of that. So thank you for talking about that and for conveying that message so strongly. Last question for you is just if you can tell a little bit about KSU Miracle and what that did for you.
Yeah, so for me, when I came through, when I was at KSU, I did not know what I wanted to do. I think I came into to college wanting to be an education major. I did that for a semester. Quickly found out that I don't have the strengths of being a teacher. There are way more qualified people that can teach our young people today, and I am not one of those people, as I found out. And so I jumped over to do, I think I did business for a semester because I was just trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And then I jumped over to the School of Communication. And while I was in the School of Communication, I was involved with KSU Miracle. And that same year, the KSU Miracle is it's an on-campus organization that raises money and awareness for Children's Healthcare of Atlanta every year. And so they have these things called donor drives where you reach out and do personal fundraising, but you also ask for donations from the community. And then at the end of the year, there's this massive celebration called Dance Marathon. And it's typically in March, and it's where all the students that are registered for Dance Marathon and that have been raising money all year long get a chance to kind of come to this event. And that's at the end of the event is when the total amount of money that was raised is revealed to the campus. And so it's a fun event. You get to hear so many impactful stories of families that have come to this event and have been impacted directly by the fundraising of Miracle at KSU and by the fundraising of Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. And they tell these stories of like, my family wouldn't be here today had it not been for the hard work of a bunch of college students raising money, raising awareness, raising their voices for people who need it and people who are in the hospital battling these things that, most even begin to endure. And so that event, I was involved in that organization for a couple of years, but I think as I was involved in that organization, being so moved by the stories that were told and being so, compelled to go out and tell these stories to people to say, hey, there are people over here that need our help and they want us, they need us to raise money for them. And this is why it's important to me. I think during all of that, I was beginning to kind of find out that I love storytelling. I love creative storytelling. I love conveying a message. And then about a month before the event in about 2018, I think it was, is when our executive director came to me and said, hey, we need someone to host this event. We need someone to get us from point A to point B to kind of host the entire event from start to finish. Would you be interested in doing that? And at the time, that was probably one of the more larger events that I had ever hosted. There have been a few things that had come up every now and again. And I knew that I loved kind of, conveying excitement and getting people on board about something. But that was a 12-hour event. So, I mean, we're looking at this is a full situation here that I had never, been a part of. And so I said yes to it. And that was around the time that I began to kind of like figure out that hosting and entertaining, but also conveying a message actually kind of lives in a major called journalism. And so I would say that being involved in that on-campus organization was such a pivotal factor in me finding journalism, because growing up, we never had the news on in my house. And I was talking to a friend about this the other day. If the news was on in my house, I probably would have been able to lock in and think, oh, I want to do that. But just because it was never on, I never knew it existed. And I only thought that journalism was just writing for the paper. And I've never felt like super strong in my ability to write. And so that was why I never even entertained the conversation. But once I begin to look at journalism as a super large industry, and there's so many different facets to it, I would credit finding journalism to, serving KSU Miracle in all the roles that I got to do within that organization. And if you can't tell, I'm an extrovert and I love people and I'm super long-winded. So feel free to cut me off if I go too long.
Not at all, Blake. We love everything that you've had to say. All of you have been magnificent. And I want to make sure we have enough time for the students to ask you questions. And I've had my time with you and very much appreciate all of the helpful answers. So I think I saw Steph's hand go up first. So Steph, you have the floor. Thank you again, Blake.
Of course.
Can y'all hear me now?
Yes, we can.
I'm Steph. I'm a graduating senior. So like Blake, I'm graduating into the pandemic this December, and I am a bit stressed out over the job search and how everything's going to go. I'm currently a public relations major. I'm in the agency campaigns class with Dr. V, and I'm very much enjoying that. But I'm wondering, my question is more of, what next? I'm currently in 2 internships. I'm not sure that either of them will turn into full-time roles past graduation. And I don't want to spend my time just applying to any and every job because it's a job. I'm passionate about PR, I'm passionate about sports, and I'm passionate about marketing. So I really just want to know, how do you focus down and figure out that balance between what works and what doesn't, and how to really find the companies and the organizations that will work, that you can work for, but will also work for you?
I'm going to leave it up to you guys to self-select who answers questions, or Steph, you are more than welcome to choose who you'd like to have answer.
It was kind of for Blake, and then also Cameron, because you were speaking about, following your passion in the intersection of social media and law. But really, the question specifically about graduating into the pandemic was more for Blake, for sure.
Well, congrats on almost graduating. So let's celebrate the good thing first. Obviously, the pandemic is not to be celebrated by any means. But I would say the thing that you have right now that is on your side is time, and the fact that you have not graduated yet gives you all the time in the world to kind of really focus in on what and what companies you want to work for. I'll tell you this, in my job search for finding the job in TV, I don't know how I stumbled upon this. I think it was just boredom in the pandemic. I utilized LinkedIn so much, and I feel like I really begin to understand how crucial LinkedIn is. And I'll tell you my strategy, and maybe it'll work for you too. What I would begin to do was I would apply for a particular job, right? Say it was a station in the middle of Texas. I'd find that job, I'd apply for it. I'd then go to that job's website and I would find every single person that has worked for that company, has worked for that company in the past, or people who are in leadership at that company. I would then go to LinkedIn and search those same names. Call this severe stalking or call it genius. I don't care what you call it. You would go to LinkedIn, and in my industry, basically who makes the hires are news directors. And so I begin to do that for every single job I apply for. I'd go and find the news director on LinkedIn and I would send them a message, and it would just be super brief. Hey, so-and-so, my name is Blake, looking for a job in TV. Here's my resume. Here's my reel. I'd love to chat with you sometime soon. And I think with all the time that's on your side right now, you really can kind of focus in on what companies you really want to work for and really just laser focus in on those employees and the people who make the hiring decisions at those particular organizations, and use this time to just really understand LinkedIn. I think that would be most crucial right now. It's because it's just going a step further than just applying online. And now you're putting a face, the application, and a name to potentially a hiring manager.
I second everything he said. I love LinkedIn. It's a major key. I'm always promoting networking. You never know who you're going to come across or who may know somebody that may connect you. So even just going a step further, what I do is I like to find a connection with someone on LinkedIn, Instagram, social media, whatever the case may be. So if I see someone on LinkedIn that also went to Kennesaw State University or also has a passion in the same thing I'm in, that's the first thing I start to lead the conversation with. So I'm like, hey, I'm a recent graduate from KSU. I would love to connect and get on a Zoom call and do a coffee chat. Usually we do it in person, but right now it's virtual, which is fine. And then 9 times out of 10, they're going to say, oh, great, I loved Kennesaw State too. What do you major in? And you start a natural connection like that where you have something that you had a connection from jump. So you're not just kind of reaching out and cold calling, because sometimes that can be intimidating. I get it. So it makes it a little bit easier when you have something that you have in common. So I'm all for LinkedIn.
And one more thing I'll add to going to that point is, believe it or not, people have more time on their hands than ever right now. And so they are way more open to meeting with you virtually than having to schedule like an in-person meetup at a coffee shop. So fully take advantage of the virtual meetings right now.
Great idea. Thank you, Cameron, and thank you, Blake. Thank you so much, Steph, for the question.
Yeah, thank y'all.
I hope that helped. Good. Next up, I think, is Nayani. Nayani, you have the floor.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Oh, okay, thank you. Sorry, sometimes my thing messes up. I guess it's a question for everybody. It was kind of like, because I know like right now I'm having a problem because I'm like an English major, and something that I want to do, I'm always trying to find it like on Glassdoor, Indeed, like any type of internship. But I feel like I keep hitting this endpoint where like here in Georgia, where it feels like there's nothing that offers for something I want to do within the English area. That like, do you guys, I guess, like have any like, advice or opinion on that? Because sometimes I feel like right now I have to venture outside of Atlanta or like in a different state in order to pursue what I need to do, especially like whether it's like editorial work, publishing, or social media like content or management, and just everything like, so yeah.
Niani, this is Jessie. I'm gonna hop in first, and then I definitely want others to chime in as well. But that's a great question. I think that so you mentioned sort of publishing, maybe social media, and editorial things like that. I would recommend to kind of add to what Blake was saying earlier, and Cameron as well. You might want to first think about not only like Glassdoor and Indeed will take you so far, right? But some of the opportunities that you want are probably competitive enough that they don't have to advertise on those websites. So I would highly recommend, if there is a specific niche or area of publishing or editorial work that you want to do, whether that's specific to a group of people or to a certain location or maybe a certain type of media, go find those organizations. If there's a a publishing house that you specifically follow, go and seek out that website. Go to that website, see if they have an internship. Like they were saying, find folks in your network who might have done those kinds of things. And also think of it like a ladder. So if you want to get to New York and work in really competitive, in that kind of industry, you're going to have things on your resume that show that you've done this kind of work before. So think about what is local. There are probably some smaller magazines, like think of other types of media that you can do here in Atlanta that then can get you to where you want to go. Possibly pursuing things in other cities or other locations. This is also, a unique time in terms of the location. It doesn't matter as much as maybe it did earlier, so you could use that to your advantage. I know folks who've taken on internships and they don't even live in that place, and it's fine right now. So, maybe that could be a silver lining to what's going on. But yeah, my biggest advice would be like, look at who is in your immediate community who might be doing something that's relevant and start getting that experience at the small level. So I know I mentioned earlier, like starting with a campus, campus media and communication. So, what are you doing right in your local community? And then use that as stepping stones to branch out into other areas. But I'm sure other folks have other advice as well, but that's my starting point.
If I could jump in here really quickly. So I started looking for jobs, like I was going to graduate in this past May. So I started looking like late March, mid-March. So I was applying to jobs as everything was getting shut down. And a lot of places got back to me and they were saying they were in a hiring freeze. So I started looking basically anywhere and everywhere. And there are a lot of places now that are like offering internships virtually. And so there were a lot of places that when I was looking for the job that I have now, they were like, hey, we're based out of California, but due to all this, like we're gonna take on any interns from anywhere. So I would say, like, if you're okay working virtually, and it can be a struggle sometimes, it's kind of difficult to realize like you've been working so long, like let's take a break for a second. But if you're okay working virtually, I would definitely recommend looking out of Atlanta for virtual internships, because I was finding a lot of those while trying to actually like find a full-time job. And a lot of those were starting to pop up towards the beginning of the pandemic, and I'm assuming that they're probably still popping up around the place.
Well,
So just keep in mind that virtual across the nation's probably it's a good place too.
Great advice, Courtney and Jessie. Thank you. And Nayani, does that answer your question okay?
Yes, it actually does a little bit, because especially what Jessie said about like looking up like local magazines and everything like that, because I know my main area is kind of like I want to do like travel writing or travel blogging for like companies or something like that. And so yeah, so I guess it is like kind of like deep diving more. Thank you.
Those aren't the jobs that you get straight out of college necessarily. So those are the ones where you want to have the smaller publications that aren't as flashy, but then they know when they're going to hire you, that you are going to be a great employee. So again, think of it as like, okay, it's competitive, so I need to make sure that I've done this before and done it on a smaller scale.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Shirley, you have the floor.
Yes, hi. Good afternoon. I'd like to ask a question to Cameron. I believe she is an attorney, and I need some advice because I'd like to be part of law school. Does she have any advice on how to pass the LSAT, and what law school was the one that she joined? Because I'm going to be graduating this December, and I'd like to have as much advice as possible.
Absolutely. So the LSAT, it's such a love-hate relationship because you need it to get to law school. But I'll just start with this, that your LSAT score does not define how you will do in law school, and your law school grades will not define what job you will get, period. But what I did to study for the LSAT is actually self-studied. I didn't take a course. I was trying to save money. So I used the Power Score Bible books. You can get them on Amazon. Super helpful. If you can afford a course, go for it. I think the intimidation factor of the LSAT is just because you need to do it to get to law school. It's a learned exam. It's just like any other standard test. It's difficult, but if you put in the time, you can definitely excel in there. The benefit of getting a high LSAT score is to get a scholarship, and along with your GPA and all over your resume in general, your whole application when you submit to law school. So I did some internships at law firms in Atlanta. That also helped my application because then I had a little bit of experience. I was able to discuss different topics in my personal statement that others might not have been able to because they didn't have that experience. But you do not have to have any legal experience to go to law school. Deciding on a law school was a bit difficult, but I knew the general area where I wanted to be. So I narrowed it down. I applied to like 11 schools. You do not have to apply to that many. I also got fee waivers, so I only had to pay for 2 applications. So if you go on lsac.org, they have law school forums, and in the forums you can request fee waivers for the schools you want to apply for. So I actually help people on their law school journey, and I have a series, it's called The Legal Tea, and I'm starting a Facebook group called The Legal Tea Social. So I give tips and tricks and resources on how to get into law school, get through law school, and pass the bar, because I did pass by the first time by the grace of God. I ended up going to, I like to talk too, so just like Blake, just cut me off if I need to. But I attended Cumberland School of Law in Alabama. I chose that school because they gave me a scholarship. Let's be honest. And then I also loved the reputation they have, and I knew I wanted to join the trial team. We are ranked 3rd in the nation for our trial team, so I knew that was definitely a factor I wanted to consider, as well as their alumni is just phenomenal. Like even myself now as an alum, like I'm always looking out for Cumberland law students, and Cumberland lawyers in general have a really reputation in the Southeast, and I knew that's kind of where I wanted to stay. But going back to LinkedIn, I looked up Cumberland School of Law, and I saw so many alumni across the states, just like Kennesaw State University. So that was kind of a deciding factor I wanted to consider. So long story short, it's a tough process, but take it step by step. Don't try to jump over anything. Enjoy where you are in the process of undergrad, and don't try to rush it, because once you get to law school, orientation day, they told us this is the first day of the rest of your life in the legal profession, and that is so true.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Shirley, if you have any other questions for anybody else, you can ask at this time.
No, that'll be all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Cameron. Are there any other questions from students? I don't see any hands up, but you can just scream right out. Steph, it looks like you might have your hand up again, and Lisa, and you guys take whoever was on first.
I don't want to take a question away from anyone else if there are any other people with questions. Okay. But I guess my question was really like about when it comes down to passion. Where were you? I know you kind of talked about this. This is really open-ended for anybody, you know, who wants to take it. But how did you really figure out what you were passionate about? Because I've kind of figured out this summer that I wanted to work in sports, and I figured that out by working in sports. But like, was there a point where you thought you were passionate about something, worked in it, and then we're like, oh, this is not for me. This is not what I want to be doing.
I would say that was definitely me. I don't know if everyone can hear me okay, but I thought, you know, once I, you know, changed my major to communication and had the concentration in media studies, I thought for sure, oh, I'm going to go into radio or television production. And I had like 3 internships that I did while I was in school, and I didn't like it. And so by the time I graduated in 2014, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I know I was in a space that I needed a job. And so I just encourage you, even while you're in school, to get as much experiences as you can, whether that's through internships, volunteering, job shadowing, having coffee chats, because I was that person that had my degree but didn't know what I wanted to do, didn't know what I was passionate about. And so, had in hindsight, I think back in school, I would have tried to explore more as far as what's out there and what I can do with my degree. Because, you know, fortunately, I did find something I was passionate about after I graduated in my first job. But you know, the time now in school is just to kind of always do your research, connect with people that like they said, LinkedIn, find alumni that work in different industries or areas that you're interested in, and try to have that conversation with them to kind of see their journey and what they like to do. So I definitely, you know, say utilize all of your resources beforehand to kind of develop and understand your passions before you graduate. And, you know, I will say that I don't want to say a success story, but I ended up in the right place after I graduated to find my career passion. And now that I'm, you know, on track to where I want to be. So definitely my advice was just utilize all your resources while you're in school, try to get experiences, you know, whether it be in an internship or a part-time job or, you know, job shadowing or having those coffee chats or conversations with people that are working in areas that you're interested in.
Thank you, Arielle. And Steph, does that conclude that question for you?
Yeah, that answers it. I was just kind of wondering like about experiences, because you know, you hear all you see success stories on LinkedIn and when people talk about it, but it's the failures that people don't really want to, not necessarily failures, but like oh, I did this and I didn't like it. You don't really hear that as much.
Right.
Well, and
Yeah.
if I could chime in too, this, you know, I think it's an interesting thing when you're in college and the things you perceive that you'll do in your life. I tell students frequently that working in a university was not what I envisioned in my career, but I love the work that I do. And so, you know, it wouldn't have probably even made the top 10 if I was imagining, but it's really, really meaningful. And so I think that, you know, a lot of times you end up kind of going on a very circuitous journey to eventually get to what you really love doing. And also I think that, you know, we kind of live in this era where you don't have to do just one thing forever, you know, so you can move into, I think, other allied career fields as you progress through, you know, your own career. So I think that shouldn't have to feel quite as overwhelming. Like, okay, if I don't get my dream job as my first job, like I'm actually really impressed with Blake. Like, I mean, landing a job like that, you know, probably would have been my dream, but then my dream has changed many times since then. So I think it's a matter of like pursuing things that are interesting to you, but knowing that you can kind of pivot and use all those experiences to keep adding to your experience.
That's a great point, Jessie. Thank you. And I'm going to give our questions are heating up. So Ordette and Lisa and Michael. So actually, I'm sorry, Lisa first, and then Ordette, and then Michael.
Thank you. Yeah. Can you hear me? I was a senior HR coordinator working as a campus recruiter and in global mobility. One thing that I would say to you is also look at companies who have competitors. One company that I worked for, they were like at the top of the list, you know, for internships and for recent graduates. We were looking at salaries of 100,000 plus. Now, a student coming out of university, that kind of money is very hard to come by. You're basically a company here and there. The competitors now, where I actually created their campus recruiting program, they were in about the 70,000 region. So you think 100K versus 70K. 70 was more in the norm. So sometimes look and see who their competitors are and go for those companies. The other thing, Naomi, you mentioned just solely looking at companies here in Georgia. Remember, some companies are gonna pay for you to be in a remote location, and it's only 6 weeks if it's an internship or what have you. If it's a co-op, then you're probably looking at about 12 weeks. But again, most companies will pay for you to get to wherever it is they're going to locate you. And if it's global mobility, if you really want to, reach to other ends of the world, again, they're going to pay for you to get there. They're also going to probably teach you that language, and you get the joy of, seeing another country and be immersed in another culture. In terms of passion, I was at the point, somebody had posted something like about being burnt out and whatnot. I worked and worked and worked and worked and worked, and eventually the universe stopped me and I came to a screeching halt. I don't remember 3 months of my life because I was in a coma. Now, I made really good money before that happened, and now I make zero money, and I finally found my passion. I continued to go to school. I was like 2 classes away from getting my degree, but I realized after talking to a lot of doctors, like, why was I one of the lucky ones to come back? Because the illness that I had, most people don't live from it. And I had that conversation where that's not what I wanted to do, what I was doing, before I got sick. So it was really having a conversation with myself, not with my family, not with my best friend down the street, but having a true, real conversation with myself and asking myself, is this what I really want to do? Trust me, bills will get paid. They will get paid.
Lisa, that's such good advice. One of the things people have been saying recently, I think a lot of celebrities have come out and said this. I think there's been a lot of just public figures who put a lot of emphasis, because we live in this social media world where people are constantly watching each other's lives, and most of what's getting publicized on social media is the successes. It's really important for the students to hear from a fellow student who's a returning student that life diverts sometimes on a different path than you expected, and it's important to just stay on that. So thank you for that perspective. I appreciate that. Move to Ordette.
I'm sorry. Can I just make one little comment? Just because
of course.
The bittersweet thing of going to law school, now I'm always having my lawyer hat on. I love the reaching out to a competitor, but be careful of non-compete clauses. You would hate to work for a competitor company, and then now you're stuck and you can't work in that area for 6 months to a year, and now you have this amazing job offer with your dream company, and then now you can't take it. So that's just the lawyer hat on me. I had to say it. But I love that idea because that is so true. There's a lot of times you can get in the door by going through somewhere else. Just make sure you're reading your contracts.
Good advice, Cameron. Thank you. And thank you, Lisa, again. And Ordette, you have the floor.
Hello. So I was just wondering how you guys stay motivated like during school, and how you guys, when you were saying following your passion and whatnot. So how did you stay motivated when it comes to like doing your own research so that you can work in your own passion? Because I do find myself like wanting to do the research to find like what I want to do in the future, because right now I don't know, and I'm a sophomore. So I know I have time, but I also I don't really know where to start. And so it's hard to find the motivation to start, to like see which positions I'm interested in, and like keep doing the research, like keep like updating my like research on what I want to do. So how did you guys stay motivated to do that?
I'm going to say
I'll jump in
shameless
real quick.
plug. Oh, go ahead.
No, sorry, you go ahead.
I was just going to say really quick, you should definitely connect with your career advisor. Um, that's kind of, even before I worked in the Department of Career Planning and Development, Jessie, ironically, was my career advisor when I was in school. So I met with her a handful of times, and having those conversations with her definitely helped keep me motivated in my search for career options and so forth. So that was just my quick plug.
No, that's super crucial too. I remember I was meeting with my academic advisor, Tabitha, and I would not have graduated in December of 2019 had I not been meeting with her semesters before then, because I thought I was doing so much on my own, because I was like picking my classes out when those when like you would register for classes, and I had already sold out to the fact that I was graduating in 2020 at some point. Didn't really know when it was going to happen, just thought it would happen at some point. And I had a meeting with my academic advisor, and she was like, why are you not moving these things around so you can graduate in December of 2019? So definitely take advantage of them, because they are way better at schedules than we are, and that's what they do really well. And so take advantage of that. But in terms of staying motivated, for me, the field that I chose to pursue, journalism, is extremely competitive. And I kind of had to have one of those moments with myself where I was like, if I'm not going to be super disciplined and try to learn everything that I possibly can about landing that first job and understanding the different market sizes. And Jessie, you made a comment earlier about like how like, you know, this is a dream job that I landed. But my goal one day, I'd love to make it to New York or to LA or to a top 10 market. And so understanding the market sizes and how someone jumps to different markets, and really just selling out to the particular industry that you want to pursue. Now, granted, that's difficult when you don't really know what you want to pursue. So obviously give yourself time and give yourself grace as you're trying to find your different passions and whatnot. But the biggest motivating factor for me was like understanding that this was not going to work if I did not become extremely competitive, because this is a field that everyone wants to work in. And thinking about a lot of my former classmates who kind of had moments where they were like, look, I didn't want to be that competitive. Like I didn't want to work in a field that required me to sacrifice that much to follow my dream. And so I found this new dream, which is great for them. But at the same time, it's like you kind of have to make that decision. Like, is this what you really want to do? And if so, determine the level of competitiveness that's required for your particular industry. Because I would imagine even Cameron can probably relate to this too. Like I have so many friends who want to be lawyers, but it's like they kind of have that moment where they're like, it just wasn't for me. It was just too much. And that's okay. But understanding that there are certain industries that really do require you to be all in or not in at all.
Definitely. And this may sound corny, but I know when I was trying to take the leap of faith and leave my law firm job position, especially as a somewhat new lawyer, I made a list. And what skills am I good at? What are those skills? What jobs would correlate with that? Am I able to kind of build something on my own? Can I create something that might not be as traditional? Will that work for me? So maybe making a pro and con list. I know that's like super corny, but it worked for me to really see where I could build a lane and what will work for me. Because a lot of times we can't test out all of our passions like throughout our life. Sometimes we just can't do that. And then also keeping in mind, your first job doesn't have to be the dream job, doesn't have to be this best job, but it's a great job, and you never know what skill set and what things you may learn during that job to help you find your real passion.
And to add one more thing to what Cameron just said, someone told me when I was looking for what I wanted to do, they said your purpose is when what you're good at intersects with what you love. And so if you can't figure out what you're good at, because that's for me, that was always awkward to ask myself, what am I good at? Begin to ask the people that are closest to you, because they'll quickly tell you what you're good at and what you're not good at. And then once you know that, try to figure out where does that intersect with what you love to do? Like, what are the things that you wouldn't mind doing if there was no money involved? And where those two things intersect, that's typically where your purpose lies. And so begin to kind of entertain those conversations too.
Blake, you got some snaps from Steph. That was lovely. And Cameron, thank you so much for your answer on that as well. And Ordette, do you feel satisfied with those answers?
Yes, I do.
Awesome.
Is it okay if I ask one more thing? So when it comes to like advising, so like how do you kind of balance that with like school? Like sometimes I feel like I don't have time for anything else, but should I just go for it and just make time and stuff?
Right before you guys take a stab at answering that question, I just want to give enough time for Michael as well. We got 5 minutes left, but fire away. No, please fire away.
I think when it comes down when it comes to try to do time management, it can be very difficult, especially in college, because there's so many different things you want to be involved in. There's so many different things you could do, but maybe setting up appointments can really help, because I'm all about scheduling and to-do lists. Like my Google Calendar is color coordinated. It's OCD, but it really helps when you're trying to figure out what's your passion, because you're gonna have to make sacrifices. I know Blake said that. You're gonna have to do that. You're gonna have to set time aside. Maybe you can't go to brunch one weekend, and you have to meet with your advisor. And now again, because we're virtual, you can hop on a Zoom call. You don't have to take the trip to drive to go to school or whatever the case may be. So just kind of set a time and say, you know what, on Thursdays, I'm gonna sit down for an hour and just kind of decide, what do I like, what do I enjoy, and see if I can get an appointment with my advisor.
Courtney, do you have any answers to that? You look like you might be poised to answer.
No, I'm sorry. My dog was like trying to get it from my lap and I was trying to stop her. Sorry.
That's no
Sorry.
problem. Real life things. Or does that answer your question okay there?
Yes, thank you so much.
Absolutely. And Michael, last but certainly not least, love to hear from you on your questions.
Hey guys, can y'all hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. I just wanted to start off by saying thank you to everyone on the panel for sharing y'all's stories. Really appreciate it. Gives awesome insights no matter like how different all of y'all's fields are. Also, it's kind of like an open question, but so like personally, I am a psych major, specifically, or psych minor, sorry. My major is in organization communications. And I plan on going the HR route before I go into consulting. Specifically because I've also been really plugged in on LinkedIn and been looking at a lot of positions that, and I'm sure we've seen this, that like it says entry level positions and then they're like, by the way, you need a PhD. And you're like, wait, hold on. Is this actually entry level? And I don't know. I feel like, and that's obviously exaggerating, but my point is like, when you guys are looking at different applications into jobs and it says entry level position, but then it talks about this X amount of experience that you need to have. Now, say hypothetically you don't have that, either it's hours of experience or years of experience. Do you guys still apply to it and then kind of just talk through it there? And because I mean, the other thing is like companies can even help build people to have that experience like internally. So is it still worth, because I mean, I feel like I've still been applying to most of them, but there's some that like require like 6 months of HR experience or project management, this and that. So just kind of want to hear what you guys have on that.
Real quick, I'll give you a 15-second answer. I'll try to. I can relate to that so much because the current job that I'm in right now, there were so many qualifications that I did not match. I just happened to apply for it literally by faith, just saying if this is meant to be, it'll happen. And somehow along the way, I was never actually formally invited to a second interview. I was just invited to come and tour the station. And I think that was them saying, hey, is he willing to come to something that's not even official yet? And so while there might be little tests like that along the way, I think at the end of the day, when they meet you and at the end of the day, an in-person interview or a virtual interview, when they get a chance to hear your heart and like the reason why you're applying for that job, I think that exceeds any qualification or anything that you might not have for that particular job. Now, granted, I don't advise you to go and apply for these jobs that are like, require 15 years of experience, like would not do that. But if there's a few things on the qualifications list that you don't have, I still say go for it, but definitely try to have those touch points as much as you can, just so they can know that while you might not have the qualifications, you do have the eagerness and you're ready to learn if given the opportunity.
So say as a recruiter here, I feel obligated to answer this question. I will say, like, when I'm looking at resumes, and I hire college students, so a lot of students don't have a lot of experiences. So definitely, I say highlight the experiences you've had in the classroom. There has to be some project, some group thing that you've done, and make sure you highlight that like you would do as a job. Especially when it comes to the HR space, I'm not sure what you're looking for in particular, but for example, like an HR coordinator or a generalist, you don't really need that much experience. So if you have, classroom experiences, if you've worked part-time, try to look at what they're looking for and make sure those experiences on your resume align with that. And maybe that will kind of count count out those years that you don't have experiences, because as a recruiter, we're looking for, can this person do the job? What have they done previously and what their skill sets are? So if you're able to highlight that in your resume, that will definitely catch their attention. And I know the resume part is just one piece, but it is an important piece of the application process. And also, I wouldn't mind connecting with you offline, because you said you want to work in HR and you're interested in consulting. I do hire people to be consulting. It's like shameless plug, but would love to connect with you and share any advice or answer any particular question that you might have, just because we're kind of at time.
Well, that's great. Thank you, Arielle, for that recommendation. Michael, does that answer all your questions?
Yeah, you guys touched on it perfectly. I'd love to connect with you after this as well, Arielle. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you. That's exactly the type of connections we want to make. And that leads me to my next question for the Department of Career Planning and Development. How can all of the students on this phone call follow up with the moderators after this call?
That's such a great question. Thank you so much, Christina. We do have the contact information for the moderators, so we're happy to share out that information. And as Claire has been posting in our chat, we encourage all of our attendees to meet with Career Planning and Development to talk through some of these questions you have more in depth, or to just talk to us about what your thoughts are regarding your career plans. I'm also going to post a link in the chat for our virtual All Majors Fair that's coming up in just a few weeks. This is going to be our last big career fair for this semester. So if you are looking for any opportunities, or if you just want a chance to get a better feel for how virtual networking is working, as all of the panelists have attested, networking is so important, and this is an opportunity you don't want to miss. We have lots of opportunities to prepare you for this upcoming job fair, including our virtual job fair prep day on October 8th. All of this is just right around the corner, so please don't hesitate to reach out, use your connections, use all the resources you have available to you. That's what we are here for.
Awesome. Thank you so much for giving all that great information. Jessie, Blake, Cameron, Arielle, Courtney, we thank you. Thank you so much for your time. Carmen, Amanda, thank you so much for the opportunity to be on this call, and thank you to the whole Department of Career Planning and Development. And finally, as students, you guys are the whole reason we're here, and we're just really glad that you entrusted us with your ear today, that you gave your time, and that you trust all of your fellow owls to give you good advice and guidance. So keep on coming to these calls, keep on connecting. And I have a last sort of quote that I want to share with you all. It's a kind of important one. You know, the opportunity that we have to connect with each other is really about making sure that we extend ourselves in the world in the way that Zig Ziglar said, you can have everything in life you want if you will just help enough other people get what they want. And so, you know, I have to appreciate, obviously, the time that has been given to all the professionals on the phone who have their work to do, but I also have to encourage all of the current students to turn around and do the same thing for students who will come after you in the future. So thank you so much, and we hope this was worthwhile for you today. Bye, everyone.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Nobody wants to leave. I love it.
Thanks, guys.
Bye,
Appreciate y'all.
Thank you.
See you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.